Unspoken Issues.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Unspoken Issues. I am Jesse Starcher, and I am right here with my good pal, Dean Compton from the Unspoken Decade. Dean Compton, are you ready to talk some 90s comics tonight?
You know, I'm always ready to talk 90s comics. I'm the guy when it comes to 1990s comics. There's nobody who can talk 90s comics like I can, so bring it.
We're going to be hopping into DC from 1993. The imprint is Milestone. Now, this was a poll that was put up on the Unspoken Issues podcast Facebook page, but it wasn't one that I personally came up with. This was one that was suggested by a friend of the podcast, Matt Cooper. You can also hear him over on the House of Ghoster podcast. I know he's a podcaster in his own right. He suggested we talk about some of the Milestone comics. Now, yeah, he threw Blood Syndicate out there, so we came up with another one to kind of pit against it, and it was another Milestone comic, and that is Icon #1. So to let everybody know how the voting went down, 11 votes went to Icon #1. Blood Syndicate, which is the one I voted for, just because I don't think I've read any of these Milestone comics. So I was just like, okay, what looks cooler? Well, you know, Blood Syndicate sounds pretty cool.
Milestone comics are excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, before you even get into any of the socio-political stuff surrounding them, the fact that they're, black comics, which was really important at the time, very groundbreaking. They're just really great superhero comics in their own right.
So Blood Syndicate #1 gets 5 votes. So tonight we will be discussing Icon #1. So I'll ask you, were you pulling these off the shelf and reading them at the time, or was this something you went back and read?
This is actually something that I did read at the time, and it's very important that I did for a lot of reasons. Number one, like I said, it's just a fantastic superhero universe set in the fictional city of Dakota. Was populated with a lot of really, really cool super beings with a lot of really cool superpowers, a lot of interesting takes on already existing pastiches. And so, yeah, I got Hardware #1, and I got Blood Syndicate #1, and I got Icon #1, and I never got Static #1, but I would pick them up here and there, where I could, because they didn't order a lot of these comics at my comic book shop, and I think part of that was probably racial, because these were black comics with black superheroes. There are some Latino and some Asian Americans as well in there, but these are by African American creators, black comics, black heroes, and so they didn't keep a whole lot on the shelf. And in fact, I remember one time when I bought them, she's like, these are black comics, right? Like, they're for black people. And
wow.
I know, no, this is, racism is a real thing, like, to this day. And it would be, a lot of times we don't talk a lot about politics, the Unspoken Decade or what have you, but it would be imprudent and improper for us not to bring up the fact that this was like a big deal. When these comic books came out, we're not too far removed from Southern distributors refusing to take comic books that prominently featured black people. They did not want to take them. There could be issues. And there would be issues with it. They just wouldn't do it. They didn't want to run them. And this comic came out, what did you say, 1992?
This Icon #1, the cover date, it's on sale March 23rd, 1993, according to Mike's Amazing World. Yeah.
So 92, 93. So that would have been happening in the early 70s, late 60s. It's not too far from that. And obviously with things that we still need, like Black Lives Matter, we still deal with disproportionate economic stability for African Americans. We still deal with disproportionate police brutality for African Americans. And so these are still issues that face us hard now, but they were certainly prevalent then in the age when, Rodney King had just happened. Because of video, we would see more and more attacks on the black community by police and stuff, and it was just wild, how that was going. And I lived in Arkansas, very sheltered. I was very white, I'm still very white. My pigmentation not changed, but I was very sheltered and very conservative at the time, and I was very into the guys like Rush Limbaugh and stuff. I was in 7th grade. And, I didn't know any fucking better. You know me now. You're like, that sounds crazy.
Yes,
right?
I do.
Right. Now I'm so left I can't make right turns. But things are different. Things are different in this sketch because those were the ideas I was exposed to. Those were the ideas I was in proximity with too. These were the things that surrounded me. These were the values of the successful people around me. I was a poor guy. I wanted that power. But what I wanted the most of the time was superheroes, and I didn't care who made them. I didn't care who the superheroes were. So I bought these comics. I can't lie. It was really important for me personally. And this is, I think it's more important, obviously, that these were black comics by black creators. They weren't made, enlighten some white lad in Batesville, Arkansas. But it's probably good that they did because this was a perspective, a point of view that I wouldn't be exposed to for the most part. I mean, yeah, I saw the Rodney King meeting. I'd see like NWA on MTV and things like that. But mostly what I would see would either be a sensationalized version of what I perceived to be urban African American culture, or what people around me who were racist white people telling me what that culture was, or it would be a sanitized version of it that you would see on a sitcom. I love the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but it's obviously, for the most part, I'm not saying it never hit any issues or anything, but it was very sanitized, very wholesome, very, very safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, for me to be able to expose to these aren't even radical ideas. They're really superheroes that I understood and knew, but they're just turned to a different perspective, that different point of view, so that I could see things in the heroes I never saw and in reality and the world and in my nation and in my culture that I hadn't really seen. I would be a conservative for some time longer, probably about 6 or 7 more years until I got to college. But Milestone Comics, Static, Blood Syndicate, Zombie, Shadow Cabinet, Icon, Hardware, they're very responsible for opening my eyes to an entirely different and incredibly awesome world that I was just not going to see otherwise. And I apologize if that sounds preachy or soapboxy or anything. I don't mean to go on too long, like I said, but this is important. It's important stuff. And I think that the creators would think it was, this would be a little important. Like I said, the most important thing, black voices getting heard, getting to do black characters.
Just to kind of put you in my mindset at this time frame and where I was at, politically, I never heard much from my parents in regards to politics. If I heard much of anything, it was usually about maybe religion. That was probably one of the big things that they were trying to get across to me as a young kid, a young teenager or whatever. But, I never heard my parents come home and talk about politics or racial injustice. That's just something I never heard. Now, I'm talking about for my parents. We did have cable TV. I was able to watch MTV. I was able to watch what was going on in 1992 and what was being covered on the media at that point in time. So I knew all that stuff was out there. It's not like I was completely ignorant of it. I was getting into rap at about this time, so I had...
Yeah, I can get into it a little bit later. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had NWA's Straight Outta Compton, I believe. Is that the name? Was that the name of the...
It's a great album. Yeah, it's a great album.
I can remember getting Body Count with Cop Killer on it. That was a trait. Somebody dubbed that for me on a straight up blank cassette.
Nice.
And I'm a big fan of Body Count to this day. Regardless, I was kind of like same as you are, where it's like I don't care where the comics are coming from. Not me personally. As a kid, I didn't care where they were coming from. I just wanted to read it. I saw these on the shelves. The only reason I didn't pick them up is just because I had my own stuff and it was kind of tough for me to go, okay, well, I got to start something else now. And I don't want to do that. I want to stay in the comfortable universe that I'm in the comics that I can afford right now. I can't just keep adding stuff to the pile. So that's probably most likely why.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to add to the pile then too. Think about the proliferation of superhero universes at that time. There's a Milestone, Topps does the Kirbyverse, Dark Horse comes out with Comics Greatest World. There's the Ultraverse at Malibu Comics. Image Comics, expanded its line. Marvel expanded its line in a shelf war. Vertigo's really starting to take off. Another DC imprint. And then there's, of course, all the ones that went by the wayside, like Triumphant and Dagger Comics and, that kind of thing. So there was a lot of new stuff at the time. And I think that's one of the things that, it probably hurt Milestone some, is that they came out at a time when, a new superhero universe wasn't as special as it would have been, even 18 months earlier.
That's true. So to kind of talk a little bit about the background of Icon, I want to give a little bit of background about Dwayne McDuffie.
He was a genius. Rest in peace, number one. Rest in power, because the guy's a very smart guy. And if you get the chance, look up YouTube videos with him, if you're listening, where he talks about being a black creator in a primarily white business, how white fans would perceive things. One of the things he talks about is, I think he said two's the limit. Like he was writing Justice League of America, I want to say, and the editor wanted to put 3 black people on it. And I can't remember the characters. I think it was like Jon Stewart, Vixen, and somebody else. And so, they did. But then, Dwayne McDuffie was like, 3's the magic number. You can have 1 African American. You have 2 black people. But if there's 3, now it's a black comic. And now there's an agenda. And now Dwayne is a black guy trying to force his stuff on, which wasn't true. Like the editor fucking wanted this.
Yeah.
And Dwayne McDuffie, certainly, at different times, like with Milestone, obviously part of Milestone's, reason for existence was to get black characters. And like I said, there were Latino and Asian American characters too, other and homosexual characters, transgender characters. Very important to note that. It was to get diversity out there, get those characters out there by creators who looked like these characters, get that point of view for sure. But with Justice League, it wasn't like that. The editor wanted this, and certainly Dwayne McDuffie, had a very strong sense of social justice. It would have shown through. The fucking book is Justice League, but he wouldn't have an agenda. But he would talk about how white fans and some white creators would perceive anything like that, any amount of diversity in a book as like it's an agenda. So I strongly suggest anybody check out any interview they can with him. He's a brilliant writer. He did great work. Like I said, he wrote a lot of episodes of Justice League, which in a lot of ways, the greatest superhero cartoon of all time to this day. He created Damage Control, which is what a concept. And it's such a funny book. And it can be so hard to be funny in a superhero universe. Yeah. Nailed it every time. And obviously he was, one of the cornerstones of the Milestone universe, co-creating, Icon. I believe he co-created Static. I think he co-created all the guys at the original, the original. I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but, the universe doesn't exist with him. I believe he at least co-wrote the universe's Bible. And honestly, it's a shame. We lost him way too soon. Nobody has a bad word to say about Dwayne McDuffie. Everybody who knew him, only good things to say. Brilliant guy, nice guy, patient guy, and just we lost him way too soon. I feel very bad for everyone who he touched. I never knew him personally, but he still touched me with his work. And that's about all I know about Dwayne McDuffie. As my girlfriend would say, I'll say something like, I don't know very much, proceeds to tell you a full-length novel.
Yeah. Aged 49. That is way too young. Way too young. Passed away February 21st, 2011. From what I understood, it was due to complications from heart surgery. So, yeah, we lost him way too early, and he could be doing so much right now. Let me give you a little bit of background from what I pulled from some New York Times and Wiki stuff. So bear with me. I may read directly from what I quoted here, but it says, Mr. McDuffie received a bachelor's degree in English from the University of Michigan, followed by a master's in physics there. He later studied film at New York University. After a stint as a copy editor at Investment Dealer's Digest, he took a job as an editor with Marvel Comics in 1987. In the early 1990s, wanting to express a multicultural sensibility that he felt was missing in comic books, McDuffie and 3 partners founded Milestone Media, which the Plain Dealer of Cleveland, Ohio described in 2000 as the industry's most successful minority-owned, operated comic company. McDuffie explained, if you do a black character or a female character or an Asian character, then they aren't just that character. They represent that race or that sex, and they can't be interesting because everything they do has to represent an entire block of people. Superman isn't all white people, and neither is Lex Luthor. We knew we had to present a range of characters within each ethnic group, which means that we couldn't do just one book. We had to do a series of books, and we had to present a view of the world that's wider than the world we've seen before. So you can see that he recognizes we'll just say the deficiencies of the comic universes that are out there and what is needed to kind of represent others inside these books. Look, 40-year-old white man here. I look at Superman, and to me, it's just like, hey, there's Superman.
Right.
And there's plenty of times where I was reading through some of the stuff that McDuffie was saying is like, he looks at Superman and he's wondering, like, where's someone that looks like me?
And this is something I think a lot of, a lot of white dudes, don't like to think about or they don't want to admit. But for like you and I, there's never been a shortage of people who looked like us, acted like us, shared most of our values as far as heroes or characters and people to emulate. And like Dwayne McDuffie said in that quote, none of them are expected to represent everybody. Like the Punisher is supposed to represent every white person, like he does it, just like Spider-Man does it, just like Superman does it, just like Doctor Doom does it. On the other hand, like he's saying with minority characters, they, if there's one black guy in the Justice League, all of a sudden that's speaking for all, black people as far as a lot of fans are concerned, for better or worse. And that's what makes Milestone so cool, as he pointed that out. And, as we talk about Icon, you have so many different points of view, because one of the things that it's easy to forget when we're talking about races and we're talking about sexual identity, transgendered people, etc., is there's a lot of gender fluid people, all kinds of different, people, Asian Americans, Latinos. Like, there's not just one point of view with. You can get a group of gay people together and they will have varied points of view. They will think different things, despite that, that they are a part, they're all gay, but links them together. And I think comic books, not just comic books, but American, entertainment in general, has done a very piss poor job of getting that across. So allowing people of races, and really allowing people who aren't just white dudes to see different variations within their groups, to say, hey, this one person isn't how we all are seen to be. This one, example isn't how I have to be or how all white people are going to see me. Hey, there's somebody like me. There's somebody like my aunt. There's somebody like my sister, my brother, etc. And I think that's just as important as making sure that we have, one black guy on the Justice League. It's just as important to note that in the Milestone universe, like, there's all kinds of different point of views within black. We call them black comics as shorthand, and obviously they are by black creators with, primarily black characters. But it's important to note that, like, they don't all act the same, they don't all talk the same, which is different from what had been done with a lot of black characters in comic books up to that point.
Let's go ahead. We'll hop into the creative team here and the synopsis, unless there's anything else you'd like to say.
No, man, let's do it. I mean, you're driving this train. I'm just
That synopsis is right around the corner, but first let me talk about Amazon Music. You may not be able to find Augustus Freeman's spoken word, A Blue Alien's Blues, but you will be able to find the 80s heavy metal band Icon's album, Icon, which features On Your Feet and Rock On Through the Night. If you head to getamazonmusic.com/W2M Network, you can get a free 30-day trial where you can check out over 70 million songs. That's getamazonmusic.com/W2M Network for that free 30-day trial. So like I said, this hit shelves March 23rd, 1993. We talked about the writer Dwayne McDuffie, penciled by Mark D. Bright. You could actually see him on other comics such as Solo Avengers, Iron Man, G.I. Joe, Green Lantern, Action Comics. Inked by Mike Gustovich and lettered by Steve Dutro. So we open the issue with what appears to be a blue alien inside a spacecraft using an escape pod to avoid destruction as their ship explodes. Landing on Earth in 1839, a lady finds the pod as it settles on Earth. Opening it up, she is bathed in light to find not an alien inside, but a young baby instead. Now, it's important to note that even though the comic does not disclose too much of this small origin story, the wiki lets us know that the pod landed in a cotton field in the American South, and the person that found the alien was an enslaved black woman. Also, the alien took the appearance to an extent of the woman, turning itself into an African-American baby. Fast forward almost 160 years to 1993 to the city of Dakota and to the law office of Augustus Freeman IV as he prepares for his daily duty of helping those in need. However, his night gets more interesting when his home is being robbed by a group of youths, and it's in a lavish home, by the way, being robbed by a group of youths looking to make a quick buck. Enter Raquel Irvin, a young teen that joins the others to rob Augustus' home in order to try to score a typewriter to help make her dreams of being a writer come true. However, as the teens split up inside the home, Augustus comes downstairs, stumbles upon the robbery, and confronts the boys, who pull a gun and shoot him. Hiding behind a desk, Raquel watches as Augustus rises from the ground. The boys are astonished and begin to run, but Raquel is amazed when she sees Augustus rise from the ground and fly to retrieve the teens. Augustus advises them they can leave, but they must return everything they stole, and if they ever did it again, he would definitely make sure that he finds them. Inspired, Raquel leaves to visit Augustus the next day with a pitch for him to become Icon, and her to be the sidekick, Rocket. Initially, Augustus was against the idea, but soon realizes he needs to be a beacon of hope to those that do not have it. Giving her a protective belt, Raquel becomes Rocket. As they meet for their first crime-fighting adventure, they don their costumes and head downtown to assist the police in a situation. However, as Icon lands to offer their help, the police direct their guns towards them, telling them to raise their hands. And that's how we end the issue. Next issue, Icon and Rocket get their first taste as superheroes as they go up against the cops. And wow. So we are off and running. My first point, and I didn't cover this in the synopsis. Number one being the N-word being used in a 90s DC comic.
Well, one of the things you have to remember about the deal that Milestone and DC had is that basically I was able to talk to Michael Davis, 6 or 7 years ago about this. And, and from what I've read, this is also what I understand. Milestone did all the work. Milestone, they did all the hiring, they did all the firing, they had their own offices. DC basically handled, distribution, got them in a better spot. But for all intents and purposes, they were separate companies. And for the most part, DC didn't have editorial. They obviously did at the end of the day have editorial control because they would utilize it to keep black sexuality out of a book.
Okay.
They didn't want. I think it was in Static. It was like he was making out with his girlfriend, I believe. He had his shirt off or something. Look, Dwayne McDuffie actually talks about it on a YouTube video, so I don't want to mangle the story. So find that if you're interested. Mm-hmm. But basically, that's the only time they ever interfered. As far as them utilizing the N-word, I mean, that was the vernacular. You talk about the rap you're listening to at the time. You're listening to Dr. Dre. You're listening to Snoop Doggy Dogg. This is a word that was thrown around, freely, sadly, by a lot of people who shouldn't have thrown it around as well at the time. But, we thought we were cool. We thought this was cool because we were listening to it. We were wrong, obviously, as white, young white, rural kids. But like, as far as like the culture, this was, it seemed okay. I listened to it in songs. I listened, it was on movies. So to see it here, it didn't super shock me at the time because I knew about the working relationship between Milestone and DC. And also the word was kind of ubiquitous then. I don't know that you do that now, but I also don't know that you wouldn't. I mean, you've seen the stuff they've done in Black Label. I think as long as it's labeled appropriately and marketed to the right audience and written by the right person, most importantly, it's not really a problem. I don't know that it would be so casual now.
I understand exactly why it was used because what Rocket says is that, do you believe that a couple black people that show up to assist the cops are just going to be, the cops are just going to be like, well, yeah, we could do that. No problem. Right. She's making a point with it. And I think obviously that's important. The character of Icon, okay, I'm assuming because I've only read this first issue, but obviously my assumption is that this is, the alien who took the form of a person and grew up for the past 100 and some years. Now, this isn't a descendant from that alien. This is the alien. Am I correct?
It is the alien. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's faked his death several times and pretends to be his son. That's why he's Augustus Freeman IV.
When he has the interaction with the kids, they basically threaten to shoot him, and you could tell he just doesn't put up with any guff. Well, actually, when Rocket uses that word, I think he looks at her and says language. He says something like, "I've watched language." So,
well, he's conservative. He is a conservative black guy, and if you read the whole comic at the end, Dwayne McDuffie writes a great article about that, where that's part of the thing that like Milestone is trying to do, give you different perspectives. Because most of the time, when you would have a black person on a show at the time, maybe with the exception of like say George Jefferson, for the most part, you wouldn't have this point of view that some black people did hold. Clarence Thomas was on the Supreme Court at this time, so it would be a very similar viewpoint to Clarence Thomas. You didn't see this in a lot of shows. You didn't see this in a lot of sitcoms when it was the black guy. So I think it was important for them to show a conservative African-American, but also show this guy learning the difference between the reality he perceived and the reality that was. And what better way to do that than to make him, above all, make this guy into a Superman pastiche who had experienced almost everything a black person could in the United States since like 1860. There's not an aspect of the system that didn't, work to oppress him, but he's overlooking his own no natural gifts, etc. So he thinks that, everybody can just work hard and get here. At one point, somebody's like, oh, you're just like Rush Limbaugh or whatever. And I think as time goes on, he learns a lesson about that. But you are correct. This is the same, the same guy. And he is very prudent, very into niceties. And he thinks the system works, and he thinks it works the same for everybody. But he's been so far removed from it for so long, he doesn't know what's going on anymore.
The title of the issue, by the way, is By Their Own Bootstraps. You hit on something pretty important there about how he believes people should work for it and get to where they are. In my opinion, what I got more out of this comic was the societal difference between Icon and Rocket. Rocket's coming from the streets. She's trying her best to make it. She has aspirations of becoming a successful writer. These are dreams all kids have. Obviously, the system or society has worked against her, and most likely in some way. And Augustus has been able to do well. He's been able to do well, and he's been removed from that aspect. So in this first issue, at least, there's more of a focus on the diversity between their economical difference, where she's from versus where he's from. Right. And of course, we're going to, right at the end, that last page is like, okay, well, race is going to be a major factor now, because now it's these two black heroes versus the cops. I didn't go to issue 2, but I mean, what a setup.
Yeah, it's fantastic. For that. I mean, you obviously want to read the next issue as soon as you can, because it's a great thing. And, again, it's still very real to this day. Like, that one of the things that's, in some ways sad about the comic book is many of the issues that it touches upon are just as important now, if not more so in some ways than they were in 1993. But we've honestly done a disservice to an extent, because this is the first we're talking about Raquel, Rocket, who is, an amazing character, like you said, has dreams and aspirations. And one of the cool things about this book is it's dropping like names like Toni Morrison, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, who are important, black cultural, and Toni Morrison's an author. The other two are like intellectuals and philosophers, etc. Very, very important people within black history. So really cool. Like, I would not have learned these names if it wasn't for that comic. But we've done a disservice when I talk about Rocket at this point, because honestly, as you read this book, and I've read every issue of Icon a couple times. Mm-hmm. It's a book about Rocket. It's not really about Icon. As time goes on, it's less and less about Icon. And it's much more about watching Raquel grow up and just really cheering for her. Don't get me wrong, Icon's a great character and he has his own growth and everything. But as time goes on, Rocket's the one. Rocket's the one that you're going to empathize with. Rocket's the one you can feel. Even if Rocket's life is different from yours, and obviously Rocket's life was different from mine in a lot of ways, but she was poor, I was poor, she was a human, I was a human. Icon's fucking Superman. You know what I mean? Like, you just do anything. So she's the one, she was young, I was young, trouble with boys and trouble with girls, etc. So as you read this, it's really more her book than his. And it's about their relationship a lot as well. Like what she learns from him, what he learns from her. And you really hit it hard when you were like, a lot of this is about the economic difference. That goes back to what I was saying about different viewpoints within minority communities, and how they could all, like you said, Dwayne McDuffie said, if there's a black guy in the Avengers, he's all black guys. There's a lesbian in the X-Men, she's all lesbians. Yeah. If you could have a world where it's primarily inhabited by black people, gay people, transgendered people, Latinos, etc., now you'll start to see the differences in their lives. There's a big difference between the life Augustus lives and the life Raquel lives, and it's important to point that out. In order for the community of Dakota to like heal itself and go forward, they're going to have to unite over their commonalities and figure that out, as opposed to like highlighting their differences too much, So, and I think that's really neat. And there's some parallels to that in real life. It can't be so easy in real life, and it's not going to be easy in Dakota, but certainly within communities, there's a lot of disparity between certain people in them. Like white gay males have more privilege than, say, black transgendered people. You know what I mean? Because there's a hierarchy within this, and so there's different points of view, and it's great to see that schism between them. And it's even better as you read it to watch them reach across that schism and really start to understand one another. It's like two communities growing to understand each other through their personas.
whole discussion about representation, I mean, my goodness, I didn't think it was that, I don't want to say it was that big of a deal to me, I should say, back when I was a kid. But nowadays, when I listen to the comics community and people who read it and people who are creators in it, it's amazing to me that argument, I mean, I'm sure you see it probably a lot on your social media feed. There are so many people that are vehemently against the representation of a gay person in a comic book. You know, that isn't something new. To me, it felt like, oh, this is something new that's been happening recently. That's not the case. That's been around for close to
probably. And of course, when you were a kid, you know, obviously you didn't have the internet. You grew up in like fairly rural Ohio, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, so like, you know, your viewpoint is, you know, what you can see, what you can get exposed to. And it was good, like you talked about, like you listened to Body Count and you know, probably watched Friday. You know what I mean? Like you probably did these kind of things to sort of, you know, that would enable you to see a different culture and everything. But there's only so much you're going to get out of that. It's only like as you grow up, you read more, you go to college, you see other points of view, you start, you know, hearing about all these things, you know, that you didn't know about when you take a sociology class or an anthropology class or a history class. And you know, your eyes get open. So yeah, when you're a kid, yeah, it doesn't matter. And especially in our areas, sadly, there are plenty of people who are like, they just want special rights, gay people, black people, Latinos, whoever. It's not that they wanted to be seen and heard and their own problems be, you know, taken into account and characters that represented them being seen. These people were just, you know, they were racist, sexist, homophobic, etc. And they just want to fight against any change whatsoever. And honestly, it's been one of the shocking things since like really getting involved in comic book stuff online when I started the Unspoken Decade 7 years ago. I thought everybody read these comics and got the same values out of them. Like I thought eventually you read Spider-Man and, you know, you read Superman and you read Green Lantern and all this shit. And if you're into superheroes, eventually you're like, you read the X-Men, for Christ's sake. Yeah. Because it's the whole fucking cornerstone of the fucking X-Men. and you were supposed to go past this. Like these were, you know, all kinds of people. Even if comics didn't do a great job, the archetypes and the philosophy was supposed to have led you to where we would do a better job and the next generation would do better. And maybe at some point, one generation wouldn't have to do anything because we would have fixed it, whatever that would means or would look like. But no, instead there's all these like chodes who are just like, no, I don't want to see it. Why does it have to be a gay person? Why does it have to be this? Because it's time, because there hasn't been, because everyone deserves to be heard and seen, and it's that simple. And it's great. And it's especially great to see a book like Icon and all the milestone books, to be honest, because not only do different, you know, there's so much diversity, so many different minority groups getting their chance to be seen and heard, but also they're just fucking great comics. Yeah. They're just fucking great comic books. That's equally important on some level. I think when minorities talk about, and again, I'm not an expert. Like you said, I'm going to be 42 white guy. So, you know, so what I don't know about this shit could fill the Western Hemisphere. I ain't lived it. But yeah. One of the things that I understand whenever like a woman or a black guy or a Latino or a transgender gay person, they want to make advances. They feel like they have to do better than a white person to get half the opportunity. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So in order for if these comics weren't fucking great, I don't know how much how much leeway they would have gotten from DC. The comics were great. They sold fairly well at first. Eventually petered off because the 90s, you know, every comic petered off, right? Yeah. But like they were so critically acclaimed, and I think they had to be, and they nailed it. I mean, and I think that's so important that they said it. That I think they knew. If you go look at like Dwayne McDuffie interviews, they knew they had to put out great comics, and they did. Whether, no matter how you feel about any of this stuff, you have to respect the art, you have to respect the writing, you have to respect the pacing, the plotting on all the books. But, you know, Icon #1, it's just great start to finish. It's just a beautiful comic book.
Let me take you to the letters page, because you mentioned that earlier, and I want to read to you that first, well, it's probably the second paragraph. This January at the Great Eastern Convention in New York, many of you expressed your doubts that a rigidly conservative African American could be any kind of superhero. Well, now you've seen the hero of Dakota. You've seen what makes him tick. He's definitely not street smart or whatever the flavor of the month is on TV. Watch him very carefully through the coming months. Does his conduct make him a hero? Is he really an African American? After all, he is an alien. Does his longevity give him a better view of America's problems, or does it place him beyond real understanding? So there are a lot of levels. When you read that, you start to realize, okay, if you just peruse the comic book, one read through, you may not pick up on everything that's being like set up here. the one thing that I completely forgot about is like, yeah, this is an alien that took the form of a young black baby. And this, so.
And the implication is that, like, if a white lady would have found him, that alien would have changed, would have just been white.
Yeah.
But the aliens took on the form that, that was coming, it's a mode of protection, on some level. So, like, in that you were reading, yeah, is he even an African-American? Is he even a black guy?
That right there is a hook for me. I want to find out if that gets addressed.
It's a constant theme for a lot of the book, obviously, is Icon having that dual identity, not dissimilar to Superman, but he almost has 3 identities.
Yeah.
He's an alien, he's a human, and he's a black guy.
Yeah.
And it comes up again and again. And I think, I don't want to say this rudely, so if I do a poor job, feel free, somebody let me know in the comments. But I think part of Rocket's job is to kind of teach him the difference between what he perceives black people as and what he thinks they should be and what they are and what they're capable of at the moment and what's holding them back that wouldn't hold him back because he's an alien with like mega power.
Yeah.
In this comic, he walks through, the bad part of town and he's like, I've just been blind. Like, I've just like I've turned my nose up to people who look like me. How could I have allowed this to happen? So he's also going to have to watch out for a savior complex. He can't just march in, no matter how big his cape is. He's not going to march into, an economically depressed part of town and just punch his way through this stuff. There's a really good anarchist pamphlet. It's called "You Can't Blow Up a Social Relationship." You can't punch one either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so these are social relationships he's going to have to figure out. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. But I think Rocket is going to show him and be that bridge. As you read further, she comes into her own, and the more confident she gets as her own self, as she gets more confident, she bestows more and more wisdom onto him. Yeah. And I think that's something that's important here too, is that older people need to listen to younger people a lot more than they do. That doesn't mean the younger people are always right, but it is to say that there's a lot of stuff that Icon is wrong about when he sets off to do good in the city of Dakota.
Let's just say the setup for Augustus is interesting enough to make me want to read more, because not only is he a well-to-do African American, he's a lawyer. There's even mention, like the guy that I don't know if he's partners with or he's just friends with, the other lawyer that comes in there and kind of talks to him. I can't remember.
Right.
But I mean, he's like, hey, we're lawyers. We could try to help people as soon as we're done screwing them over, something like that. And
he says we help people every day when we're not busy screwing them over.
Yeah, it's like, wow. Okay, so you can tell that the character of Augustus, just like you said, he's prim, proper, but he's also obviously caring.
For sure.
Not all lawyers are bad, but that the one lawyer that said, yeah, we're just we're helping him after we screw him over. That feels like a very apt generalization sometimes. So
no, for sure, and I think it's important to note that lawyers do help people. Some though, like, this is a country where things are based on litigation, and a lot of things that would be criminal in other countries, they're settled civilly here. If somebody dies in a factory and the factory was negligent, you don't charge fucking General Motors with murder. You sue them, and they decide what the money's going to be. So lawyers do help people in that regard. Like, listen, I don't know about you, but I ain't smart enough to like sue the Coca-Cola company if they put out bad cans and cause us to get poisoned. Yeah. You know what I mean? But lawyers are, and that is how they can help people. And we've done there's been a lot of propaganda, like with the McDonald's lawsuit with the coffee. There's been a lot of propaganda to make it sound like, people are just buck chasing. But a lot of lawsuits are actually filed for very good reason, and a lot of these lawyers do help. That having been said, the scumbags are true scumbags.
Yeah. I think I've covered all my talking points. You have the floor, sir, if you have anything else you'd like to bring up.
I read all of these issues. I read every issue of the original incarnation of Milestone Comics. There's not a bad issue. It's really fucking wild to say that about like an imprint. I can't think of a single bad issue of Blood Syndicate, Icon, Zombie, Cobalt, Hardware, Icon. I think it's all Shadow Cabinet. That may be all of them. Wise Son's pretty good. My Name is Holocaust is pretty good. A couple miniseries. The Death Wish miniseries is good. Like they're just good. Everything about it is good, and everything about it is informative. Everything about it will show you a point of view you may not be accustomed to getting in your culture, in your entertainment, but it's going to be worth it. It's just there's just not anything bad about Icon. There's not anything bad about Milestone Comic.
I want to tell you my panel that I wanted to pick, and if you have one, you're more than welcome to throw one out there. But my favorite panel of this whole book is when Raquel is watching Augustus kind of take off across his yard to go catch these kids, and he just takes flight.
Right.
I mean, that's obviously the moment for Raquel when she sees that. She becomes so inspired that she's like, we've got to be able to do something with this person. It inspires her to go to this guy and say, hey, you'd think she'd be absolutely frightened because she was in his house. She was with the guys that just tried to shoot him, but she was inspired enough to come up with something and say, hey, look, I want to do something with you. We've got to be able to do something. And I thought that was really cool. I love the way he just kind of floats across, and he doesn't like take off like Superman. You know, Superman's got his arms forward. Icon kind of spreads his arms out and just kind of floats across. You could just pick that up by looking at that one panel. I love that. Absolutely love it.
I think for me, the best panel is the last one where the cops, they were like pointed all their guns at Icon and Rocket, despite Rocket's, admonishment. They're like, no, the cops down there are not going to be happy to see a couple of black people in like costumes show up. Icon was like, listen, we're not doing anything wrong. Everything's fine. We're very law-abiding citizens. And he goes down there, and so the last page, the full page, put your hands up, so it's great. And of course, Icon's shocked. He can't imagine not, being treated, of course, and he's a lawyer. He's probably used to a lot of deference from, the police officers in the courtroom. So funny to see, and very poignant at the time, and sadly still poignant to this day.
Yeah, Rocket says, I bet this never happens to Superman.
Yeah, I bet this never happens to Superman. I don't think it does. It doesn't really happen to Superman.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Matt Cooper was talking about when he first suggested this. I mean, he said it wasn't anything that we had to get political on, which, hey, you can't really talk about this comic without talking about the ramifications politically that society had, or that it had on society in any way, or what it was representing. Exactly.
It's not just subtext in the book. It's right. It's at the forefront of the book.
Yeah,
and all the Milestone books are like that. So yeah, if you're not, you can't discuss these books without discussing, race and economics and sociology. And if you do, you're either doing it wrong or you're a very young person.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, make sure to just kind of go over to the Unspoken Issues podcast Facebook page. We throw polls up there where we pit two comics against each other from the 90s, and we let you decide what we're going to talk about. So that's a very democratic vote. If you can vote without being a member of the group, great. We'd love to hear from you anyway, but by golly, become a member of the group so we know where we stand and the amount of members that we have. We're getting close to 50, which as for myself, shout out to the W2M network and also shout out to the Rattlich and Broadcasting Network. Both of those are instrumental to hosting the Unspoken Issues podcast. Dean Compton, what do you got to plug and what do you got to say?
Hey, head over and read all of our great blogs over at the UnspokenDecade.com, the greatest 90s comics website out there.
Did someone say Unspoken Decade? The place where you need to go to check out some great articles about comics in the 90s? This would be a good time to plug a sponsor of the W2M network, and that is Grammarly. For you, the listeners of Unspoken Issues, Grammarly is offering a free download of the Grammarly software. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2M network. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2M network to download Grammarly for free.
We're very active on the Facebook group, so look for us on Facebook. We are at Unspoken Decade on Twitter, which I've been updating a lot more in the last couple of weeks. So, a lot of great stuff over there, mostly just comic book pages. But come take a look at that, and, you never know what you'll see. You'll probably see some Milestone real soon. So we're going to wrap this bad boy up. For Jesse Starcher, I'm Dean Compton. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.